You're listening to The Corbett Report. CorbettReport.com.
Welcome back to the program, friends. Welcome back to Corbett Report Radio. I'm your host, as always, James Corbett of CorbettReport.com, coming to you today, as every day, from the sunny climes of Western Japan, where it's currently the 3rd day of October 2012. So once again, thank you all for tuning in for tonight's conversation. And tonight we have another very interesting conversation lined up for you. We're going to be talking to someone who is behind a brand new documentary film that's going to be coming out in the very near future. It's called Take Back Your Power, and you can find out more information about it at takebackyourpower.net. But reading from the About page, Take Back Your Power is a crowdfunded public awareness documentary feature film which exposes the technocratic smart grid agenda by which corporations are currently attempting to quietly assert the basis for further control in the lives and homes of the world's citizens. The film will also focus on specific solutions which are presently available for humanity to leapfrog outdated ideas of control and co-create a better future. And who could ask for anything more? So, without further ado, let's bring him right up in the conversation. Tonight we're talking to Josh Del Sol, and once again, it's takebackyourpower.net. Josh, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be on.
All right, well, let's start talking a little bit about Take Back Your Power and how this entire idea for this documentary first came together.
Yeah, I've been kind of, as most of the viewers can relate, on this sort of waking up process to what's really going on in our world behind the scenes for about 10 years, around the time of 9/11, like many of us, and started to follow the smart grid agenda about 2 years ago. Really, last summer, about a year and a half ago, is when or just under a year and a half ago, is when they started to install smart meters in my province of British Columbia. I'm from just outside of Vancouver. And so I've been following that a little bit since then, and I was aware of the health effects. I was aware of the fact that these things are generating pulse radiation all the time, that they're going to spy on you, that this is basically like, the spy grid, a 1984 style spy grid that's making people sick. It finally kind of pushed me over the edge, so to speak, when I got a series of text messages from a friend who said, I just had my smart meter installed and I can't even function in my body. I didn't know it was the smart meter. She had no idea that it had just been installed, but she later, after experiencing these symptoms, she went outside and she noticed a little sign on her door and the meter had been replaced several hours earlier. So not psychosomatic. And so skin rashes and nausea and unable to even be in her apartment and sleep in there from the first night. So she was sleeping in her van, like there's many smart meter refugees doing so. So she's one of the unfortunate 3 to 7% that are electrohypersensitive that feel the effects from pulsed microwave radiation at this power density. And that's when I finally said, why is this not being talked about? I mean, this is absurd. The fact that this is going on, and literally there's a whole subset of the population that is being completely marginalized in their own homes, and all at the whim of some corporate agenda. So this needs to be talked about. So I decided to get a cameraman friend of mine, and we went out and just did some basic interviews with some people who are experiencing these health effects, and also some experts, the former premier of our province, some doctors and so forth. So what started into an idea for a little YouTube has grown to a feature film.
Sometimes it snowballs like that, and along with that come a lot of attendant costs that I know that you weren't necessarily thinking about up front. So we'll talk a little bit about people who want to support this work and how they can do that as well. But we'll come back, we'll take a short break, but we'll come back to talk more with Josh Del Sol about this documentary project, takebackyourpower.net, and what the real agenda is behind the implementation of this smart grid net that is going to catch us all if we're not at least aware of what's going on and fighting back against it. So on that note, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned right there to Corbett Report Radio. Welcome back to the program, friends. You are tuned into Corporate Report Radio here on the Republic Broadcasting Network, and tonight we're talking to Josh Del Sol, the filmmaker behind the forthcoming feature film project Take Back Your Power. Once again, you can find that at takebackyourpower.net. And as always, if you don't catch the URL address for the guest, you can always find it in the show notes for tonight's episode at corbettreport.com/radio when this is posted to the archives. But tonight we are talking about this smart grid and how it's being implemented in a seemingly unified agenda across much of the world, certainly across much of North America at this present time in Vancouver and everywhere else across my home and native land of Canada, and of course in the United States as well. So it is something that is affecting more and more people, even though there are still a lot of people out there who don't really even know what the smart grid is, let alone why we should be concerned about it. So Josh, let's start with some basic brass tacks. Let's talk about this smart grid and really what technology we're talking about and why it is supposedly being brought in at this point.
Okay, sure. So everybody has on their home or apartment everybody who's not on solar power or something self-sustaining at this point has an energy meter or utility meter that has been up to this point at what's called as analog. So it has a device that physically turns on it, and it requires a meter reader to come and read it once a month or once every few months. And it's been very reliable, very working well up to this point, the last 50 years. But essentially what's happened is there's been a drive to, quote, modernize the grid in the name of increasing efficiency and reducing energy consumption. And also so the utility companies can spot grow-ops, and so that they can, tell 3 seconds sooner if the power is off in your area and so forth. But the main thing is an idea. It's a green idea that we're going to be saving energy by having smart meters on the side of our homes, and the basis of that is that if they can charge you more for using energy at peak times, then you're going to be motivated not to use energy at peak times or to use less of it. So if you're going to pay double, during dinner time or plus or minus during the day, plus or minus 5 hours, then people are, going to be forced to use energy at other times in order to lower their bills. So essentially it's a ploy. It's an idea. I mean, the idea that we're sold is that it's going to save energy. And specifically, if you look on Wikipedia, under the Obama administration energy policy, it states that the goal is to save possibly more than 4% on energy consumption by 2030. So that's the goal. And what's being spent is billions upon billions of dollars to take out a system that has been working. Arguably, in some cases, it could require, modernization, but it simply doesn't make sense with the idea that we're, saving energy. We're going to somehow benefit the planet by this technology.
Exactly right, and people might have been exposed to this in the types of PR campaigns where they'll show you being able to program your dishwasher to use to go on at a non-peak time, so it doesn't really affect you or your the functioning of your household, but it'll save you that extra 3 cents in electricity or whatever the idea
right.
is. And this is how it's sold to the people, without really all of the implications of what this type of interconnected smart grid hooking directly into all of your appliances and all of this really means. And it's part of a much, much, much broader interlocking agenda that doesn't just include the power grid itself, but all sorts of smart technologies that are going to be wired in together into this networked hub. And you can see that being pushed quite strongly these days by IBM, etc., and their ideas for smart cities that will all have all of this technology networked into centralized locations where they can all be run efficiently, because it's all in the name of efficiency. But as you say, there's obviously a different agenda behind this, and there's different reasons for this. There's different layers to this. So let's start talking about some of the problems that are that we can see already with this type of technology. And let's start with the idea of privacy, because the idea of privacy is becoming less and less possible in this digital age, as I'm sure people have already seen through the implementation of social media and things like that. But when we start talking about wiring our appliances directly into this smart grid that's examining everything we do, we start to lose any idea that we have any privacy at all. Let's talk about some of the privacy implications of the smart grid.
Sure. So with the smart meters, they'll be able to tell exactly what's going on in your home at down to the microsecond, based upon 24/7 communication with all of your appliances, which will also in the future, if this goes through fully and if there's not a public backlash, all of your appliances will need to have a wireless transmitter on them, and they'll need to be, certified under some smart, program. So this means that not only, just stepping aside from one moment to the health issue, this means that not only is your smart meter emitting on average of 13,000 microwave pulses per day, but every one of your appliances is going to be doing the same thing because it will be needed to be communicating with the smart meter itself. So that is a serious concern. We'll get into that a little bit later. But as far as the privacy issue, just diving right in. March of this year, Wired magazine, the current CIA director, David Petraeus, was quoted as saying, "We're going to use smart appliances to spy on you." And it's almost like, and he was later down in the article, and it's very just putting it out there. It's kind of like, it's getting to a point now, James, and I'm sure you're seeing this, is like, it's just getting more and more in your face. And it's kind of like this collective force of the controllers, and they're kind of saying, this is what we're going to do, and what are you going to do about it? So they're almost challenging us in a sort of, schoolhouse bully sort of way. What are you going to do about it? So he goes on, David Petraeus goes on to say that he's proud of the birth of the smart grid, as any parent is of their creation, of their, their brainchild, or whatever you want to call it. So another interesting thing is that the utilities say that, okay, we might have the ability to take all of this information, everything that's going on in your home 24/7, and be able to break down exactly what's going on, what television channels you're watching, what you're doing, what time you get up in the morning, when you leave for work, when there's nobody at home, when it's just your kids at home. They can tell, what appliances are being used, what shows are on your television. So there's all these privacy implications. But not only that, and they're basically saying that we might be able to do that, but that information is not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay with us. You can rest assured that. It's coming out more and more lately that, for example, in Australia, just last week, confirmed smart meter data shared far and wide. And it goes on to say on theage.com.au, this article in a major paper in Australia, detailed information about electricity customers' power usage, which gives insights into when a house is occupied, is being shared with third parties, including mail houses, debt collectors, data processing analysts, and government agencies. So we're now starting to see the confirmation that your data is being shared. And in California, to bring it onto this side of the Pacific, I think it was last summer or last fall, the Public Utilities Commission in California actually admitted that, yes, we're hoping to sell your data, and we hope that it stimulates market interest in the data. We expect this to be a new economic sector of billions of dollars, trillions of dollars, for exactly what's going on in your home, so that they can, market things back to you which they feel you need. So this is happening, and some utilities are denying it. Other utilities are saying, this is what we're going to do, and what are you going to do about it, kind of thing. So it's quite interesting.
And of course, it's going to be different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Different utilities are going to have different policies behind the scenes and different ways of implementing it. But generally speaking, are they doing this through getting people to assign a new agreement when they get the smart meters installed, or are they simply doing it behind the scenes with sort of terms of use type legislation?
Yeah, there's something in commercial law called tacit acceptance. And what that means is, if you didn't say no to something, you just said yes. So what's interesting is, if you and in BC here, our utility is called BC Hydro, and there was an investigative news reporter who kind of pinned down their PR rep. And she said, are British Columbians legally required to have a smart meter? And she couldn't answer the question. Her only standard response was, they are a necessary upgrade to the electricity grid. And she answered that same, like a puppet robot, she answered the same answer 4 times in a row. So she wasn't even able to modify her answer. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. You are not in any jurisdiction, in any state, province, or country required to have a smart meter. And you might be told that you are, but you probably won't get your utility to say that in writing. And if they try to bully you, just don't take it at all and say, put it in writing, and we're going to communicate that way, because you are not subject to their threats and bullying. So what we're seeing is that smart meters are not required, but because public awareness hasn't got to a place yet of people being on this thing, the number of people opting out has still been a smaller percentage of the population. In British Columbia, we're hearing up to 250,000 potentially households here, which is about 10% of the population.
Well,
yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, it is like so many other things. The awareness of the people is one of the key things at play here, because obviously more people are aware of it, more people who understand the potential dangers of this type of system, the more people who stand up against it, and the less likely they are to be able to implement it. So once again, it's another agenda that relies on our ignorance of that agenda in order to continue proceeding and rolling out to the general public. On that note, we're coming up against another break, so let's take a short breather. But once again, we'll be back to continue talking with Josh Del Sol about Take Back Your Power. I suggest you go there to the website to check it out, takebackyourpower.net. We'll be back right after this. Saul of takebackyourpower.net, which is the home website of the forthcoming feature film documentary Take Back Your Power, about the coming smart grid and the entire smart agenda and what's really behind it. So many different issues and aspects that we can't hope to cover them all in just one short hour of radio broadcast. But I hope you will go to takebackyourpower.net to find out more about this and to delve deeper into some of these issues that we're just glancing on tonight. But let's take a look at another aspect of all of this, which is the underlying issue of control, because of course the ability to control the power grid has always been a pretty fundamental aspect of control over our lives. That's why we call it getting off the grid, because obviously the ability to take power into your own hands is something that's anathema to a system of control and centralization. Well, how much more control would they have in a smart grid, where basically they can literally control your individual appliances in your own home down to the appliance level? Josh, let's talk about some of those issues of control and what kind of control this gives outside agencies over the lives of everyday people.
Yeah, that is a serious issue as well. Basically, we have technology and we have a system here that once it's fully operational, will be able to shut down all of your appliances or any of your appliances or utilities, because smart meters are going to be on water and gas as well. That's the plan. And so at either a hacker or a utility or a government agency or anybody who has access to this grid, this control system, will be able to shut down whatever they want to in your home at the drop of a hat. And they won't need to justify why they're doing this. They'll have this level of control. This is very worrying to anybody that values any sort of semblance of freedom. Just to put it really bluntly, this is like, we talked about it at the opening of the show. This is like the Big Brother grid. And so that level of control is not at all in alignment with any principles of freedom or democracy. And that ties me to what the former, we talked about the current CIA director. The former CIA director seems to have a little bit different slant on this, at least based upon my research. And let me say that I'm not an expert. I'm kind of a researcher by way of just this film and this. I'm passionate about this issue, but Definitely go. I just encourage you as the viewer, go do your own research, because you'll be astounded with what you find. The former CIA director said, James, he's also James, I can't remember his last name right now off the top of my head, but we have his video. He was interviewed and he said, what they have now is not this, the smart grid is not smart at all. In fact, it's a really, really dumb grid, because we're sold the idea, as you said earlier, James, that we'll be able to use our cell phones to turn down our air conditioning on a hot afternoon. Great. But what they don't tell you is that a hacker in Shanghai or that a government agency will be able to do the same thing or worse. So then it gets into the idea of not only can they shut your appliances down in your home, but under the guise of a false flag or a terrorist attack or, government insiders or hackers or whatever you want, can actually take down the whole grid. So this is something that someone else we interviewed, a cyber expert named David Chalk, he talked about this a lot, that having all these entry points, new additional entry points into the grid, which can be hacked, everything can be hacked. It's just opening up the barn doors for, the worst to happen. So it makes you wonder, we're going to invest as the government, sort of, and corporations' position, perspective, we're going to invest billions and billions of dollars to push this smart grid through untested devices. They're not UL or CSA approved, or they're not even tested. And we're going to push them through with disregard to safety. And then we're going to turn around, James, and we're going to point at the problem and point at how big this problem is and say, look at what we just did. And now we're going to use that as leverage to pass more draconian legislation like CISPA or whatever the latest legislation of the week is. So when we step back, we can kind of see this very clearly, this Hegelian tactic it's getting so tiresome. And I think all of your viewers are well up on this and don't need any additional pointing out that we see this going on all the time. This is going on in the smart grid, and it's up to the people, to the level of awareness to come to a certain threshold, like it is. And I was watching some videos in Bahrain and elsewhere in the world where they're not subject to so much mind control, but the level of awareness to come to a certain threshold in order for enough a percentage of the people to take action and say, no, we're not going to take this anymore. This isn't about one issue. It's about this group of mafia that has taken over the government.
Unfortunately so, and that's such an important aspect to all of this as well, the idea of a cyber false flag, those dastardly hackers from Iran or whatever the enemy boogeyman of the week might be that somehow got into the grid and shut everything down and caused chaos and mayhem for a couple of days until the government restored order. It's almost like the entire plot has been written out for them, and all they have to do is implement it, and this is really putting that final key in their hands to be able to commit something like that, and then to just basically say, yeah, it was the Iranians, it was the Chinese, it was whoever.
Exactly, James, and this is exactly why I feel so passionate about this film, is because this is like the hot button issue. We don't know it yet as a society, but if we stop the smart grid, that will create a wave of momentum in the direction of freedom and basically self-determination again as a society and as individuals.
Exactly right. We don't call it taking back your power for nothing. But on that note, let's go to another break. We'll be right back. All right, friends, welcome back. Here we are on this Tuesday night edition of the broadcast, and we are talking to Josh Del Sol of TakeBackYourPower.net, where you can go and find out more information about this forthcoming feature documentary on the smart grid agenda and what you can do about it. Again, it's called Taking Back Your Power because your power ultimately lies in you, not in the dependence on the system that they want to make us all basically a part of. So let's continue talking about some of the reasons that we should be concerned about this, but of course we're going to steer this into solutions and positive things that people can do about this smart grid agenda. So Josh, let's just talk a little bit about the health effects of this, because I know that's something that you've been concentrating on and you have a lot of information on. So let's talk about some of the health ramifications of this smart technology.
Sure. James, the issue with the health is that it's highly, highly significant, but it's also an issue in which it's difficult to get everybody to understand how significant it is. In other words, we've been kind of conditioned as a culture through our technology, our cell phones and smartphones and, wireless technologies, that it's harmless, that it's okay. And the problem there is that, well, really to communicate this, to make this the lead issue is, you're going to risk those number of people that are still convinced that there's absolutely no problem with wireless radiation. The issue is that the research has been corrupted since basically the 1950s. There's been more than 6,000 research studies done since 1930s. The large majority of which, more than 75% of the research studies, show that there's a harmful effect, biological effect, with this kind of radiation, with electromagnetic radiation, specifically with microwave radiation that's pulsed. Smart meters. What we found out from the California Public Utility Commission, another thing that came out of there, was that PG&E was required to basically put it out on court record how often their smart meters are transmitting, how often they're pulsing microwave radiation. And what came out was not this, it's just going to be 45 seconds a day kind of thing. It's just going to, they're going to be on for 45 seconds and then they're going to be off. That's the common misconception. Again, there's so many lies around this. I encourage everyone to do your own research. But what this court record said, it was that over the course of a 24-hour period, the average smart meter is going to be pulsing 13,500 times. And the smart meters that are closest to the routers and the collectors, because everyone's information is going to be passed from house to house to house to house until it gets to a router, until it gets to a collector. The ones closest to the routers are actually going to be pulsing up to 190,000 times per day. So if you can imagine like a strobe light going off and on multiple times a second, that's like what your smart meter could be doing. And it's at intensities that are up to 200 times the threshold for extreme concern as laid out by the European International Building Biology Guidelines, or Baubiologia. So we measured smart meters to be 198 times higher than that threshold, to be precise. And so there are cases where there's 14 or 30 or 50 meters on the other side of a kitchen wall, or God forbid, a bedroom of a child. And the public is told that we have no recourse. We do, but we're told that we don't by the utilities in most cases. Now, in many states, there's an opt-out now, but I'm kind of sidetracking. Let me bring it back to the health issue itself. So with this kind of pulsed microwave radiation, the research is starting to indicate some extremely troubling things. We just launched 4 days ago on our website, takebackyourpower.net, a video that's 44 minutes long with an acclaimed medical doctor, and he's actually a teacher. He's a doctor of doctors, or a teacher of doctors, named Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. He's been featured on Mercola.com many times, and he's originally from Germany and highly renowned. So he's saying now that the research is showing, he did a study himself that looks at when a mother is pregnant, it looked at 10 autistic cases, 10 autistic children, and 10 cases of normal children, like non-autistic cases. And what his study found out was that going back to the sleeping location of the pregnant mother, before she gave birth to the autistic child, was 21 times higher in microwave radiation than the mothers that gave birth to normal children. So this is not like the only research that's been done. There's been dozens now research papers been published on the linking between neurological conditions such as autism and Alzheimer's and attention deficit disorder and all of these things, Wi-Fi in schools, ADHD going up, connect the dots. All of these things being linked now in the independent research, the researchers who actually care not to take a bribe are coming up with these conclusions. So this is extremely troubling stuff. Just recently, the national, let's see here, the National CFIDS Foundation, the NCF, announced a link between chronic fatigue syndrome and low-level microwave radiation. doctors all over the world now are starting to realize. In Toronto, Dr. Rena Bray is now treating electrohypersensitivity patients. Dr. David Carpenter, Harvard trained, one of the directors of the New York State Department of Public Health, is on this issue like crazy, because he's realizing that all of the research is showing that there is serious health effects happening with cell phone radiation, microwave radiation, and specifically smart meters, when smart meters get installed. Another thing that Dr. Klinghardt said in that video, he said a number of things. Maybe we don't have to get into all the details that the viewer can on their own accord, but there's almost, at this point, James, it's almost like there's so much information about the damaging effects of this kind of radiation. You can go and type in dancing aphids on radar excitation in YouTube, see a video of aphids on a plant that are literally jumping off the plant every few seconds. And this is from radar from an airport that's several miles away. And this is considered safe levels for biology. So the science has been corrupted, and basically it's up to 10 million times higher threshold safety limits than what people are actually experiencing symptoms, the levels that people are actually experiencing those symptoms at.
Unfortunately, it's like so many of the other aspects of the war on people's health. It's one of those long-term things that it's very difficult to pin down specifically what caused this or that condition when it's just part of a general rising trend in autism or Alzheimer's or any of these other conditions. But obviously, we have to start connecting those dots. And there's so many to connect. Well, a lot of information there, but if the idea of magnetic pulses and biological effects ring any bells for anyone, that might be because of the voluminous amounts of research that have gone into microwave weapons by U.S. military and other military organizations around the world. What has your research showed about those types of connections?
Yeah, we have research as well linking to that those issues of military involvement with the smart grid, and would encourage the viewers to go to a website called stopsmartmeters.org and type in military funding of smart meters. So what will come up is, in Nevada, a document was obtained via the Freedom of Information Act last year, and basically the military was funding about $130 million of the smart grid program in Nevada. And not was it just the U.S. Armed Forces, but it was the Research and Development Division. So this is concerning, because what is the military's research and development doing deploying smart meters in Nevada? Another
$130 million. That's a staggering sum of money for just one state.
Yeah, that's not even the whole state's budget. I think that's about half of it. So this is the amount of money that's being spent on this. James, is crazy. British Columbia spent over $1 billion, and there was no public input. What happened was, if you actually go back, you can see our former premier, Gordon Campbell, was flying back and forth to Bilderberg meetings. Now that should ring a few bells for all of our listeners here. So this was in the years preceding up to the new legislation that they passed in 2010, which totally nixed all the public oversight of these multi-billion-dollar expenditures. So that's extremely troubling, obviously. But just getting back to the possible military involvement here, there's a number of articles that are really concerning about this, and one of them is called another document that we came across that's obtained via the Freedom of Information Act in California, and this is from 2006, and it's called the Selected Effects, Bioeffects of Selected Non-Lethal Weapons. So this is about a 20-page document, and it's specific to microwave technology and how it affects human behavior. So there's some quite cryptic and strange, statements throughout this document. I guess they expected it to remain classified, but it was unclassified several years ago. And under the heading of incapacitating effect, the disruption of neural control, and there's a number of incapacitating effects. But under this one, and the subheading is distribution of human sensitivities in desired effects, it states, it is anticipated that 100% of the population would be susceptible. The mechanism is one that could act on many individual neuronal cells concurrently and hence does not depend on spreading regions of electrical activity as in the disease state. So it doesn't say the word smart grid in this document, but what it does say is that they're working on technologies that can affect 100% of the human population. This kind of thing is troubling, and it's troubling not to not to conspiracy researchers or not to people that are just been programmed in a state of fear. It's troubling that the research actually is connecting on this. So
it's disturbing. That is extremely disturbing, and there's so much information to go through that unfortunately we just don't have time for all of it. But let's start talking about getting off of this grid and fighting back against this agenda, because again, it is about taking back your power. So, for example, we've seen some resistance growing in places like Texas, where we're broadcasting right now in Republic Broadcasting. We had a story from kwtx.com a month or two ago, smart meter revolt, upgrade meets growing resistance in Texas, and there's people who are installing lock boxes around their meters so that they can't be swapped out, etc. Let's talk about the ways that people are fighting back against this.
Absolutely, and thanks for forwarding the conversation. I know that I can get into this stuff because there's so much research here, but absolutely, people are fighting back. And we were talking during the break, James, that we know that Google now is blacklisting, certain websites are not allowed to come up to the top of the search results to do with smart grid and not saving energy. And the reason that is because once the public finally figures out that the smart grid is a waste of money, it's not saving energy, it's not doing what it's supposed to do, it's not giving us access to the information at a granular level, it's giving that access to outside of our home. Once that starts to happen en masse, and then people literally will take back their power, for lack of a better way to describe it. And we're seeing this starting to happen, and it's really starting to mushroom now in a number of areas. California is one of the sort of the epicenters of the movement for people to say no to smart meters. Their grids were starting to be installed, I believe, around 3 to 4 years ago. And now they have more than 50 local governments have issued a moratorium and said, we don't want smart meters installed in our jurisdictions. Some have actually criminalized and outlawed the installation of smart meters altogether. And this is highly significant, not only because of the sheer number of local governments standing up to the state, to the utility commission, to PG&E or who the utility is, but this is significant because it's almost like a mutiny between government levels. So it's like this grassroots movement is being established with millions of people being represented by these local governments saying, no, we don't want smart meters. And they're saying no to the state, or in Canada, the provincial level, which are basically controlled by corporations now. It's getting more and more obvious that this is what's going on. And this presents itself a great opportunity for people to band together and to really build some momentum here. And what people can do individually is write your utility a letter to say you do not want a smart meter, you will not accept one, you can give them your reasons why, but in most cases, you're not even required to give reasons. Once they receive that letter, keep track of your communication, all your written communication, keep your documentation in a file, and make sure it's a tracked process, because at some point, they may challenge you on it. The second thing you want to do after you write your utility is put a sign up next to your meter or on your meter saying, stop, you do not have permission. I do not allow a smart meter on these premises, period. And the third thing you want to do is hundreds of thousands of people are figuring out is that because the installers come often in the middle of the night to swap your meter out without your consent, okay, so they're not asking you. And so what people are figuring out is you can buy like a $30 lock, a $30, analog meter lock that actually, it's like a ring. It goes around the meter and it attaches a lock onto the ring. And there's many people doing their own, devices for locking up their meters. So that's kind of like the step one of doing those three things. Is you don't want to have one of these things on your home, and you want to tell everybody that you want to share like some of the credible information that's on our website, that's on YouTube, that's all over the place, and share that and encourage people that you don't have to be part of this corporate endgame, and be considered as fodder for these elites.
Exactly right. And step one is so important because if we can stop this from happening before it gets put into place, it's much easier than stopping it after it's already become a reality. Once it's already installed, it's much harder to get it out. So,
and just as an encouragement, absolutely right, James, and just as an encouragement, there's already, I believe, 14 states and the province of Quebec and other locations around the world that have opt-outs available. Okay, so that's kind of the first step, is that you're not going to be, getting in any hot water for opting out. And if your state does not have an opt-out, get together with people in your community and in your state and hold your utility commission's feet to the fire and say, look, this isn't right. Look at this evidence now. Look at Dr. Klinghardt saying how this all of these dots are being connected with health concerns. The privacy issue,
absolutely.
The cost.
All right, we're coming up against another break. We're going to have to leave it there. We have a couple of callers on the line, so stay tuned. We'll be back to wrap things up after this. All right, friends, we are here in the final moments of tonight's edition of Corbett Report Radio. Once again, we've been talking to Josh Del Sol of TakeBackYourPower.net, and you can go there for more information on this documentary project. We have a couple of callers waiting patiently on the line, so we're going to squeeze them in before the end of the show. But just before we do that, Josh, just tell people a little bit about the website, what they can find there, and how they can support this project.
Absolutely. Our website, TakeBackYourPower.net, was just launched a few days ago, actually, about 4 days ago. And we've got a number of videos on there. We're doing a funding drive that ends in the November 11th, and we're raising about $70,000 for the film. And I've assembled a team of expert editors and composers and sound designers, and the film is going to be very, very good, and it's going to have a profound effect. It's going to be freely available to everyone all over the world. And we've interviewed more than 60 people now, and are just so excited about how this is all taking shape. So if you're confused or you're feeling like this is kind of overwhelming, then check out our site and subscribe, and we'll tell you when the concise, easily digestible film is going to be released.
All right, excellent. Well, we are all looking forward to that, including, I'm sure, the callers on the line. So let's get to your calls. First up, we have Mike in Maryland. Mike, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Great show as always, and great guest. I have a short question, if I may, about the safety implications, and a second question about the overarching implications of...
Okay, make it quick. We only have 1 minute.
Okay. Well, let me just start with the bigger question. If the problem of the smart meters is going to be that ultimately, either through a false flag or a terror attack, the system will be brought down, if that's the problem, and our reaction is for the government to have a solution, what will the government's ultimate solution be if that eventuality happens, if there is a big power shutdown?
Right, I see what you're saying. So what will they come along to offer in the wake of that? Josh, what do you think?
Well, obviously, their standard game and a possibility is some steps that would lead toward martial law, towards like the government kind of stepping in and taking control in a massive scale. Let's hope and pray that doesn't happen, and that actually the pushback to the smart grid can accelerate, and we can stop this thing in its tracks.
Right, and we've talked before about cyber false flags and how that can be used to clamp down on the internet even more, so clamp down on those freedoms that we currently enjoy. All right, Mike, sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. We're coming right up against the end. Let's just see if we can squeeze in Chuck in Texas as well. Chuck, thanks for calling in.
Hey, guys, how you doing this evening?
Pretty good. Go ahead.
Chuck, how you doing?
We real quick, I got in real late tonight. What is that website again?
TakeBackYourPower.net.
TakeBackYourPower.net. I'll be in touch because I'm about to pull this smart meter by an analog, videotape me taking it off of there so they can't say I'm stealing my electric, and just yank it off of there. But I want to touch base and see if there's any information else that I can get. I appreciate the show. Outstanding subject.
Josh, go ahead.
Absolutely. There's a couple of things I just want to point out. On our website in the top right corner, there's a button called Worldwide Directory. Anybody in the world can click that and find out who are the active groups in your area. That's number one. Number two, there's another website called freedomtaker.com. freedomtaker.com. And that's by an associate, Jerry Day. He has videos on how to change your meter yourself. He has documentation for $10 on the templates, letter templates you can send your utility. That's really powerful stuff.
Excellent.
The third
Good
thing I just
resource.
wanted to
And unfortunately, sorry, we're going to have to leave it there. We're fresh out of time. Once again, Josh Del Sol, TakeBackYourPower.net, all sorts of information there, and we will have you back on the program in the future to continue talking about this extremely important subject. So, Josh, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Sounds great. Thank you, James. And I just encourage everybody that we can do this thing.
All right, excellent. And thank you, Mike and Chuck, for your calls. I'll see you all tomorrow night right here. So be there or be square, and take care.